It says this meeting is being live streamed. By staying in this meeting, you consent to being live streamed. Anyone with access, whatever, that. I'm just going to click got it.
Got it.
Yep. Like that.
Christ.
Now, would you stop with a bad attitude, young man?
Tell it. Bad attitude. I told you I cannot handle this. You got to come to the house and set it up. And you said, okay.
Well, here we go.
On my own, and I knew that.
Well, we're live on Facebook right now. So
Okay,
there we go. We are live and we're broadcasting. And Ted Leitner, Mr. San Diego, welcome to Warwick's virtually.
Certainly, thank you so much. I appreciate that very much. I've been a big fan and a customer and all that stuff for many years. See how white that hair is? Many years.
Well, I'm right there with you, Ted. I see that you came here in 1978. I actually came to San Diego in 1979. I'm an Aztec. My husband's an Aztec. We're huge sports fans. So the opportunity to host you is absolutely a delight for me. So
thank you.
So glad that you're here. So I'm going to.
I did not go there, and I told people there I did not attend that university, but I love that university, and I consider myself an Aztec for life now, and I couldn't be happier to have made that association, which I didn't come here to do. It just happened. I came here to do television. The Aztecs happened, and I'm so thankful.
Yeah, I'm proud to call myself an Aztec. So an honorary Aztec is just as good.
That's right.
All right. So just real quick for everybody, I'm going to do a quick introduction. I think everybody that's here in the room with us or on Facebook, you're probably from San Diego, you know Warwick's, but if you don't, we're located in La Jolla, San Diego, California. My little sign up there says 1896. We're celebrating our 125th anniversary this year. So amazing. So with that, I'm going to introduce Ted and John, and they're going to chat for about a half hour or so. I'm going to put a link into the comment section on where you can buy Ted's book, and also where you can put some questions if you have for Ted. I'll come back into the conversation in about a half hour and bring those to Ted in a minute. So let me get this intro done, and I will send it off to these two wonderful gentlemen. Speaking of your history, Ted, I love this bio I have for you. Ted Leitner spent 41 seasons as the play-by-play voice of the San Diego Padres and 25 years as the radio voice of football and basketball for the San Diego State University Aztecs, which continues into 2021 and 2022. Following the pandemic-shortened baseball season of 2020, Ted retired from the broadcast booth and was appointed official team ambassador of the San Diego Padres by team owner and chairman Peter Seidler. During his on-air career, he has spent 25 years, 1978 to 2002, as sports anchor and commentator on CBS 8, and as a talk show host and sports humorist on KFMB AM radio. In addition to the Padres and Aztecs, his play-by-play credits include the NFL San Diego Chargers. That might have been during those Coryell years, I'm wondering there, Ted. And Philadelphia Eagles. The NBA San Diego Clippers, as well as the University of Oklahoma and the University of Connecticut. Prior to coming to San Diego in 1978, Ted was a TV sports personality in Oklahoma, Hartford, and Philadelphia. He's here today to talk to us about TED Talks, Uncle Teddy's fond memories, crazy stories, and heartfelt reflections. Joining him is John Freeman. John is a San Diego-based writer, editor, and communicator who consults with his clients in public relations, media relations, and marketing. Since 2019, he has written 7 books with notable San Diegans, told in first-person narrative format. In 2014, he co-authored a book, They Called Me God, with Hall of Fame baseball umpire Doug Harvey. A graduate of the University of Arizona, John also spent 5 years in New York City as staff writer, editor-writer with the Yankees, and later as publications director of the National Basketball Association. He returned to San Diego to spend 15 years as a nationally syndicated medium columnist and sports writer with the Union Tribune. With that, gentlemen, have a great conversation. See you in about a half hour.
Well, thank you, Julie. And this is John. And I must say that this is not my show. This is, we've all come to love and look forward to listen to Teddy. And Uncle Teddy is here, and I'm very, very pleased to introduce him. I just want to take 1 minute or so. The process was that I turned on the tape recorder And within seconds, minutes maybe, Ted talked, I listened, we recorded, and we had, I don't know, per session, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 chapters. And I took that and put a little polish on it here and there. And we added a bunch of photos, and we added a section called Voices, which in which I talked to a number of people, 25 to be exact, people who know Ted and worked with him and really care about him and admire him. People like, let's see, Bruce Bochy and Tim Flannery and John Moores and Larry Lucchino and Mark Grant and all these guys. So that's a good part of the book as well. So Ted is here. Ted will talk. I don't know that I have any specific questions, Ted, but we have many more questions. I know that I can just get you to talk if I say, Ted, how are you today? What's going on? What's on your mind? How are things? So there you go.
Yeah, why John knows this from experience. There was a period there in those recordings where he asked me about my father, which is a big sore subject for me that has affected me a lot because he was not, the easiest going, nicest guy of all time. And John said, okay, like a psychiatrist, tell me about your father. And then after I spoke, he interrupted and said, it's been 53 minutes and 40 seconds, it says on my phone here, and you haven't taken a breath yet, and you're still going. Yeah, that's what he means by just, ask the question and sit back or cover your ears, whichever one. The old showbiz about the guy opens the refrigerator, the light goes on, he does 10 minutes. So, in essence, me, and I've always been that way. No, I have not. I've not always been that way. I became that way. And I think what we put in this book, John and myself, is a lot of stuff that is not sports, that is not important, because sports is the fun and games department. It's always supposed to be that, but it has a lot of serious aspects to it. And the truth of the matter is that there's a lot of stuff in the book about my family, about growing up, because I'm convinced there's no course for being a parent. You just do it. And some people are not capable of doing that. Some people do damage as being a parent. And a lot of that was involved in how I grew up with a mother who was a saint and a father who was somewhat short of a saint, to be kind. And a lot of that stuff I think people can relate to in the book about they've all had mothers and fathers. That's a great common denominator for all us here humans. And so the impact that my father had on my growing up, on my lack of confidence, and my, believe it or not, and my lack of public speaking ability, believe it or not, all these things came when you don't have self-confidence. And you don't have confidence in general, and you have a bad self-image of yourself. Well, when you have, and again, I put this in the book at John's urging, because he thought, no, don't hold back. Let people see who you came from, what you came from, why you are the way you are, for good and bad. And I was not comfortable speaking about someone who has passed away, and someone who did his best, to do what he could with what he had, and coming from someone who was much worse than him. And then meaning my grandfather, and then my father, and I'm sure I'm better than my father, and hopefully my kids, who really seem to not have that, are terrific, and they won't have any of that. But I think everybody who reads this book can relate to that. It sounds like my uncle, sounds like my father, sounds like my mother, and I mean, really, really bad in terms of self-image. So part of that extrapolates into, I was deathly afraid, when you give reports in school, and it's you go around the class and you have to stand up in front of whatever it is, 15, 20 kids in grade school or high school. My self-image, my lack of confidence was so enormous that I couldn't think of getting up and possibly make a mistake, which doesn't make me the Lone Ranger. This is all about public speaking, and I couldn't do it. And I'm not the Lone Ranger, because the fear of public speaking is huge. Jerry Seinfeld always talks about that national research or worldwide research, that literally people, in Ask Their Fears, they put fear of public speaking higher than fear of death. So Seinfeld says, so they'd rather, actually, what you're telling me, you'd rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy. And that's basically what they say. And that was me. So despite the wrath of my father for cutting school, I would cut school every time it was my time to get up and speak. And that's what kids go through, in fear of their father. And I don't think that's as anywhere near, with corporal punishment gone, and our verbal punishment was worse in terms of being called names and put downs, and he did the same thing to my mom. It was a horrible, as they say in modern days, dysfunctional family. And I think you spend 18 years with them, your parents, and then you spend the next 50, 60 getting over that, adjusting, overcoming. And I've tried to do that. And I did. I really did, at least from the standpoint of public speaking. And I remember so many times standing at home plate in Jack Murphy Stadium and at Petco Park at home plate as the master of ceremonies. And I would take a deep breath and I would look up and the place was packed with 40,000, sometimes 60,000 in Mission Valley. And literally, before I started, I would laugh and think, what the hell are you doing here? And how did you get here? And not being able to get up and speak in front of 15 of your peers, kids, as cruel as they can be, but they're not going to be, heckling. It's not a nightclub. The teacher won't let them heckle you. Hey, Four Eyes, sit down. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. But still, people have this fear. And I was so thrilled every time. Not only do I love it, and still love it to this day, but I felt so great about overcoming those early fears. Muhammad Ali always said that. You've got to overcome your fears. He was a skinny little kid in Louisville and scared of everything. And a guy stole his bicycle, true story, and the guy was bigger. So Ali, then Cassius Clay, went to a friend of his who ran a gym and said, I'm going to go beat this kid up. I can't, he's bigger. And he said, why don't you take boxing lessons? And that's literally how it started, with a skinny little Cassius Clay, who became the Louisville Lip, and then the greatest athlete, not so much athlete, but the greatest personality of our time. And I met him one time during his suspension for not going into the drafts and service. He was going for 3.5 years. But the fact of what he did, and he was so great that the 3.5 years of his prime was taken away. So I'm doing television in Oklahoma City, and we hear Ali's in town. And a friend of ours in Channel 9 in Oklahoma City knew this friend in the Black community in Oklahoma City downtown. And somehow he came with Ali, and Ali won't come on live, but he'll come to the studio and he'll tape an interview. And it was just, it's this business that I've always said, it's not the money, which in some cases becomes really good. And I was very successful at Channel 8 and doing all these things I've done. SX Chargers, the Clippers, when they were here before going to Los Angeles, the Chargers before they're going to Los Angeles. Now that I think of it, everybody's leaving this place. What's the deal? And Ali, it was so wonderful to meet him, and his personality, just a little kid, but that kid, oh my God, I'm so grateful there are certain people like that lived during my time. Not so much that I got to know them because I didn't know him. I met him the one time he did the one interview, and I asked him a question, and he made believe he was mad, and he ranted and raved. He said, what are you, some poor man's Howard Cosell? And he ripped off the microphone, and he threw it down, and he walked off, and I'm laughing. And he's off camera hysterical. We cut, we're done, we have the interview. He comes back in, he hugs me, and he's laughing. That's what he would do. That's how he would promote his fights and became what he became. And only Joe Frazier didn't get it. And I don't mean to be not dropping names here. I don't drop names. It's just that I've been so privileged in this business to meet all these people. And when I worked in television in Philadelphia, I would tell Joe, who worked his big Clover Lake gym in Philadelphia, he worked out there, and his son Marvis was fighting at the time. So I did stories on Marvis, and I met Joe and talked to Joe. And Joe was a wonderful guy and a tremendous fighter and ferocious. My God. And I told him, hey, Joe, Ali, who he just hated, he's just promoting the fight. He doesn't mean what he says when he does these things. And then Joe would say, hey, he would come down here, and during his suspension, I would pick him up and I'd give him a roll of bills. He would choke a cow on this roll of bills of 20s and hundreds that I would give to Ali because I knew he was hurting during the suspension. And now we're going to fight. He's calling him Uncle Tom, and he's calling him this. Joe, he doesn't mean that. It's just promotion. He once saw a wrestler called Gorgeous George, the name, who did that sort of thing as a wrestler. I'm going to beat him up. I'm the greatest. I'm this and that. And Ali literally said, that's the way to go. That's the way to promote your fights. And so some people got it. To Joe, he took it personally. And you can understand that. To call a black man Uncle Tom, is anathema. And then Joe hated him so much. That's when Ali lit the torch at the Olympics in Atlanta, and shaking from Parkinson and so forth. And Joe was standing by a reporter, and then Joe said to the reporter, "Hope he falls in the flame." That's how much he hated Ali. And I tried to tell him, and at the very end of their lives, they got together. And at the end of his life, Joe would get in tears when he would talk about Ali. I don't know how the hell I got started on this rant about meeting these people. I had no idea. But that's another thing, because I read this in a couple of columnists, one-liners one time, that Ted Leitner drops names all the time. It's not dropping names. It's establishing credibility. And I hate to be a name dropper, because I know name droppers, and I hate it of showing you who I know and impressing you. But I'm in this business. So the idea of telling a story on the air and saying, I heard that Ken Caminetti did something, and there's although, but the credibility is when I can say, Ken Caminetti told me this. That's not name dropping. That's trying to establish more credibility so it's more believable to your audience. And so I've done that, and it's not name dropping, but people will always say that. That's how it's perceived. That's okay. But I think it really is establishing, hey, this wasn't secondhand. The guy told Leitner this. And I've always used that as a reporter per se, as well as a whatever entertainer to establish that. And it's an amazing business. I've been so blessed. And like I said, to go back to school and think about being afraid to speak and couldn't put three sentences together. I think that's another lesson. Not just we all have parents, and you can read about mine and see maybe yours in that and see how to maybe overcome it. And the same thing with so many other things that we go through, like in this situation, overcoming your own fears. Everybody's got them. Every kid had them. Maybe you haven't overcome it, but I think reading about in this book about how I was able to overcome a lot of those things, that were terrifying. Don't want to leave. I dropped my phone.
You still with us?
I dropped my phone. Am I still there?
Yeah.
I see me. Okay. And good hands, Ted. Bad perception, good hands. So clearly my confidence has grown, but not my hands or my hand-eye coordination. So I mean, that's many of the lessons that are non-sports in the book. And I tried to tell some new stories that I haven't told on the air, and new lines and funny lines. Speaking of funny lines, here's the story I told that got me suspended from KFMB radio for 2 days. And like most jokes, they're stupid and they're silly, but I heard Orson Bean. I don't know if you're old enough to know Orson Bean, a lot of you folks, but he was a comedian, a comedy writer. He was on all those game shows and a really, really underrated, funny guy. And he's on Johnny Carson, and he tells this joke. So then I tell this joke on KFMB radio. I'm like, they suspend me for 2 days. And it's a joke about a missionary, Christian missionary who was in the Congo in Africa, and he's trying to teach the local native population English, so then they can use that English to talk to them, let them read the Bible, and convert them. So the chief goes with the missionary, and they're going along in his habitat there in Savannah, and they stop and see a stream, and the missionary says, "Chief, stream," and the chief says, "Stream." He's very good, very good. And they move on a little bit, and they see up on the hill there, there's an animal, gazelle, as it were, up on the hill. And the missionary says, "Chief, gazelle." And the chief says, "Gazelle." And then they walk in the bush a little bit, and they trip on this couple that are in the bush doing you know what. And the missionary's thinking, what am I going to call this? I can't use slang or something like this. So he tells the chief, "Riding bicycle." And the chief doesn't say a word. He takes out his dart gun, and he kills the man, and he kills the woman, and the missionary's eyes are like this, and he says, "Chief, what have you done?" And the chief says calmly, "Riding my bicycle." It's just hysterical. I love that joke so much. So I tell it on KFMB radio, and very conservative San Diegans are complaining. So the management, the program director, Mark Larson, who's been a dear friend of my entire adult life, calls me and said, well, we're under the pressure here. You're really popular and you're bringing in a lot of audience and you sell a lot of advertising, but we have to do something. We have to do something to you. So here's the deal. This is as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story, if you were a KFMB listener back then. We're gonna tell the media we suspended you, but we're gonna give you 2 days vacation with pay. So go to Cabo, go wherever you want to go. And I did. I went to Cabo with one extra day and the 2 day suspension. And then I came back and nobody said a word about it. And I just don't know why I heard about that. Another joke. John knows this. He'll think I'm pushing the envelope. But I'm not. We're not on the air. We're not on the air here. And this is, by the way, the most amazing and first for me, speaking of public speaking, that I've never done this. I've done a Zoom on a news conference and took questions when I was announcing my walking away from the Padres job. And I've done Zooms with radio stations, recording or live, whichever, but I've never done a quote speaking engagement. And my brother, who's a psychologist and a professor at a college in New Jersey, has been teaching on Zoom for the last couple of years. And he's very funny and very humorous. And he always loved that feedback in his class. And all of a sudden on Zoom, he didn't have the feedback and he just hates it. So this is the first time that I've gone on and talked to a group by Zoom. So of course, there's no immediate reaction, booing, cheering, laughing, what have you, which actually makes me, to think about it, it makes it bomb-proof. You can't bomb. You don't know if they're laughing or not, or it's good or not. And so I'm gonna, when I get done here, tell myself, I was great, I was terrific, or as comedians say, I killed, I crushed it, because I have no idea. So this is a joke I hear on YouTube, which I would use on the air because it's enough double entendre that I think you get away with it. But a guy comes in a bar with a fairly big box, and the bartender says, "Hey, how you doing? What's in the box?" And he puts the box up on the bar, and he opens the box. He takes out a piano about yay big, and he puts it on the bar. And then he reaches in the box. He takes out a little guy, a little man, live, and puts it on the bench behind the piano. And the bartender says, "Oh my God, where did you get that? Where did it come from?" And he said, like you've heard so many times in jokes, but this is no joke. It came from an Aladdin's lamp, and I rubbed the lamp, and here it is. And since you were so nice when I walked in to offer me a drink, and a free drink, because the way I'm dressed like a bum, I really appreciate it. And because you gave me that offer, I'm going to give you a chance. Reaches in the box, takes out the lamp, and says, "I'm going to give you the last chance to rub the lamp and get the last wish." And the bartender holds the lamp, he rubs it, he closes his eyes, and then hell breaks out. Ducks everywhere. Zooming, the patrons are, their drinks are spilling and the ducks are buzzing them, and there's duck caca all over the place, and you can't move without a duck being in your face. And the says to the bartender, "What the hell did you wish for?" And he says, "Bucks. I wish for $1 million bucks, not ducks." And the other guy says, "What? You think I asked for a 12-inch pianist?" Oh no, I don't know. But if we were live, I would certainly tell that to you. On Zoom, it's a piece of cake. But I think on the air, I would tell that because it's cute, it's silly, it's stupid. And I just love jokes like that. And who's going to suspend me? I don't have a job. My only job, bestie here, is ambassador to the Padres. And I think the Padre executives would find that to be funny. We're not talking to children here on the Zoom. I don't know where I got to that.
Hey, Teddy.
Yes.
Not to interrupt you, but I just did.
As they say, I was on a roll.
I was on a roll. So speaking of the Padres, I'm just going to say 2 words to you and just say whatever comes to mind. Jerry Coleman.
Well, to be very honest, a lot of this book is about Jerry, because even though he wrote a book at the end of his life, and it was pretty darn good, and had a lot of, and I knew him like a brother, which is what he was to me, a brother, a father, a mentor, a friend, everything. I made the comment when I was speaking at his memorial service after Jerry passed in 2014. I said, our relationship was unbelievable, mind-boggling. I've been divorced 4 times. Jerry and I, literally in 35 years, traveling on the planes, on the bus, rental cars, in the press box, constantly. It's like we lived together. And not one time was there a come on, what'd you say that for? Or nothing, not even one little look a raised eyebrow, or hey, Ted, you shouldn't have said that, or Jerry, I can't believe you said it. It's incredible. It's impossible. Partners like relationships and marriages and girlfriend, boyfriend always have that kind of a thing where somebody snaps. Not one time in 35 years. And I made that comment at Jerry's memorial that if I knew how well we gotten along, and I say at the memorial, I say this as a committed heterosexual, I would have married Jerry because it's much cheaper for me and much less pain to go through 4 divorces. And Joe Torre was there that day to greet the former player, batting champion, MVP in baseball, manager of the Mets and the Yankees and the Atlanta Braves and so forth. And Joey stopped me about a year later when I was in the clubhouse in Washington talking to the Padres manager at the time, Andy Green. And Joe was so nice to come in and say, "Hey, Ted, I loved that Jerry Coleman line about marriage." And that's the thing. That's the thing. I've been in the business 50 years, but when a Joe Torre comes up to me and even knows I'm alive, then I have to pinch myself. And that's why I say it's not name dropping, because being in this business, it's not me being anything special, but you meet the most wonderful, wonderful people. And Tom Lasorda was one of those that I was like in awe of, because he was one of a kind. What manager is like Tom Lasorda, with the most filthy mouth of all time? If you want to Google something, Google Lasorda Kingman. And there's a censored version and an uncensored version. And the uncensored is just hilarious. When Dave Kingman of the Cubs hit 3 home runs, the future Padre, Dave Kingman hit 3 home runs to beat the Dodgers. And a friend of mine, Paul Olden, who's now the public address announcer at Yankee Stadium, asked him in his little office there in the clubhouse with all the media, "Tommy, what do you think of Kingman's performance?" What am I bleeping? Think about Kingman's bleeping performance. How can you bleep and ask me that? To entertain yourself, go to YouTube and you'll hear that. And Tommy had the greatest single line of nuance I've ever heard when Mike Scioscia caught for him. And was so incredibly slow on the bases that literally a double was impossible. It couldn't get 2 bags, impossible. And Lasorda made the comment, "Hey, Scioscia could race his pregnant wife and come in 3rd." And you tell me that's not a great line of all time in baseball. And that was Lasorda. He was amazing. And again, to meet these kind of people in sports and out of sports, I never took it for granted. It never didn't give me goosebumps. Maybe I was unprofessional by being impressed by these people, because they're not only famous, more importantly, they've done great things, especially the people out of sports. It's not, to play baseball is one thing, to play sports and achieve is one thing, but you're not a hero and you're not, an astronaut or a military leader. And because of this business, I've met those. I was, again, not name dropping. I'm in Fashion Valley. And you're looking at a kid who worshiped the astronauts when it first started in the early 60s, late 50s. The Mercury 7 astronauts, the original 7 that basically invented spaceflight, where doctors would theorize, but they had no idea when you got up there that after 2 minutes, your central nervous system could collapse, your heart could stop. They had no idea what the effects really would be of zero gravity and a lot of other things in outer space. These 7 guys were the ones that devised the panels, the capsules, everything, the spacesuits. Each one had a different job. And I'm in Fashion Valley, and I get tapped on the shoulder, and I turn around, and it's Wally Schirra of the original Mercury 7 astronauts. I get emotional when I talk about these guys, because I loved Wally. He was very close to me. I mean, lived in Rancho Santa Fe, and he was the only of the astronauts to go in Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo, in all 3, and a moonshot. Walked on the moon, fighter pilot in Korea, a test pilot after that. These guys from another world. You have to understand, like Clint Eastwood said, you got to know your limitations. And being around people like that, and Wally introduced me to John Glenn, another one of my great heroes. This, as many of us discussed, my partner Jesse Agler with the Padres would always talk about that. They think we're name dropping, but the idea of meeting these people is still, because there's a little kid in each of us, and it's still exciting to us. And that's the way it was with me and people like that. Jerry Lewis was another great example, because Jerry lived here on his boat at the Marriott Marina downtown when it was 115 degrees in the shade in his house in Las Vegas. And I visited that house one time when the Padres, actually the Aztecs were there and playing, and I gotten to know him because he would call and say, "Hey, I'd love to watch a game." And I thought, "Mom, Dad, Jerry Lewis wants to come up and sit with me and Jerry Coleman and watch the game. And he was one of my all-time favorites. And we actually, speaking of my dad, Jerry and I would have a contest. Whose dad was worse? So I give some comments, and Jerry would say, one time for my father's birthday, I bought him a brand new Cadillac, and I put a giant bow on it, had it delivered out in front of his house after I bought him a house, also in Bel Air, where me and Patty lived with our kids. And then Jerry called him, and he said, "What do you think?" Meaning the car. And his father said, "What? You couldn't buy me a convertible?" Jerry, see, that's what Jerry lived with. You can never please him. So many others are like that. As they say down south, as Burt Reynolds used to say, you ain't a man till your father tells you are. And you're constantly looking for that affirmation and constantly being insulted and put down. And in fact, Jerry put up with that after being an only child. He put up with that with Dean Martin. Because Jerry was very serious about, everything was like Chaplin. So serious. Comedy can be very serious. And then Dean was like, "Come on, man, that's a good take. We don't need another take. I'm going to play golf." That's all Dean cared about. And so he would, Jerry, he was his big brother. He loved him so much. And Dean would say, "Hey, kid, I look at you, I think of a dollar sign. That's it." And Jerry was so hurt by that. And that originally started to chafe till they broke up. They broke up, but we had that. Jerry and I had that business got me to be with people that I literally worshiped as a child. And like I said, there's still a little kid in each of us. He told me, by the way, they were at a bar at the Copa when they were doing Copacabana, the biggest club in the world. Of course, like all the other clubs back then in the 40s and 50s, the Mafia. And they do their first set. And Jerry's there with a bunch of women, and he's entertaining and being funny. And a guy at the end of the bar, short guy with a hat on and an overcoat, is drinking. And Jerry goes on, fun to that guy at the end of the bar. This story is not in the book. The guy says, "Hey, kid, why don't you shut up? Do you ever shut up?" And Jerry Lewis says, "You see, that's why tigers eat their young." That's like that. And the guy puts his drink down and starts to come around the bar, and Dean Martin intercedes and goes to the guy and then grabs him and says, "So it's just Jerry. That's the way Jerry is." That turned out to be Albert Anastasia, who was the head of Murder Incorporated in the Mafia. One of the most psychotic nut jobs of all time, killing so many people. And Dean Martin literally told Jerry, "Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. If you make him mad, he will have you killed. Even though you're Jerry Lewis, he will have you killed." And the proof of that, by the way, and I don't mean to be going all over the place, but what the hell? There was a guy in New York City, a guy, I don't remember his name. He was walking along one time and he did a double take. And the famous bank robber, Willie Sutton, not a very fun story. Willie Sutton walked by after breaking out of prison. And the guy thought, "That looks like Willie Sutton." And he ran to a cop in what they call the Port Authority cops by the subway stations in New York City. And he said, "Hey, officer, I just saw Willie Sutton, the bank robber who escaped. I saw it on the news." And then the cop starts walking after Willie Sutton and sees him and calls it in, and they arrest Willie Sutton. Now, as it turns out, it's on the news. And they show this Good Samaritan, and he's getting pictures of popping flashes. And Albert Anastasia was watching at his mansion in Staten Island. And Albert Anastasia, who wanted to kill Jerry Lewis, hated rats, hated so-called rats who would point out that he did it. And he sat there just grinding his teeth that they showed this guy, the big hero, who pointed out Willie Sutton, who now is back in jail and got arrested. And he told his guy, "Whack this guy. I hate rats. Whack this guy." And this guy was walking along a couple of days later in New York City and was shot 3 times and was killed. That's the Albert Anastasia that Jerry had this brush with at the time and didn't know who it was. So that's the deal. It's not they're famous. They have a lot of money. They're interesting. They've had stories and interesting things that most of us, 99.9% of us, including me, have never had. And I thank this business for giving me that opportunity to be, including with Jerry Coleman, my partner. I mean, I grew up in New York City watching Jerry Coleman as the second baseman of the Yankees. And then eventually Billy Martin, who became extremely famous, replaced him, and Jerry was on the bench. And Phil Rizzuto, the shortstop, and Jerry Coleman, the second baseman. And I was a vendor at Yankee Stadium when I was in high school. And I was torn because I wanted to be a sportscaster, even though I would not stand up in front of 15 people, had no discernible skills, and my father confirmed that. he was nice enough to confirm that you have no discernible skills. Do not major in radio, television. You'll never be a sportscaster. Whatever.
Teddy, let me interject one more time. You also got to know one of your great heroes and great people of your life, Tony Gwynn.
Oh, please.
What comes to mind?
And Tony what comes to mind is the laugh. The laugh. And I planned to play that for you because it's on my iPhone. And whenever I get kind of down, it's Tony in a session for El Cajon Ford. And it's the outtakes of him laughing, made a mistake, laughing. But the truth is, in my golden years, I have hearing aids now because after wearing what they call cans, the big, headphones for 50 years of broadcast, pretty loud football, basketball, and baseball. 3/4 of my hearing is gone. I have glaucoma. I can't see well. So the deal is, if I play it on my iPhone, it goes directly into my hearing aids, and you wouldn't be able to hear Tony's laugh. So I thought, well, there goes that opportunity. But when he first played basketball, and he came on a basketball scholarship to San Diego State, though he was a great baseball player in high school, probably better in baseball, but the basketball coach at the time, Tim Beasley, did not let him play baseball. Then they said, okay. So Tony, as the story goes, played a Aztec basketball game, an afternoon game at Peterson Gym, and then walked over to the old baseball field, not Tony Gwynn Stadium, the new one, and was 4 for 6 in a ball game, having not touched the bat in how many years in San Diego State. That's Tony. But that's just baseball. That's just statistics and skill and hand-eye coordination and all the wonderful things he had. And I first knew him in basketball, doing the Aztec games starting in 1978. And he started then when he got permission to play both sports. And it's just not just a laugh. He was wonderful. He was a great father. He was a great son, a great son to his mom. And he lost his dad when he was 63. And I sat with his dad, and he used to come up in Dodger Stadium and sit with me and Jerry Coleman, and was so proud of Tony. And I would tell him that he needed that. If you ever saw the tape where he runs out the right field in Yankee Stadium in Game 1 of the World Series in 1998, and he puts his hands on his knees and he looks up. And after the game, I told him, I know what you were doing. Yeah, I was talking to my dad. My dad loved the Yankees. He loved baseball. And he would have loved to be here for the first game of the World Series with his boy. And Tony and I had a relationship that really was one of my great moments of my career. It was that special we had done after Tony passed away, and it was with Dick Enberg, the late great Dick Enberg, and Mark Grant, and Mike Pomerantz, and Alicia Gwynn, his widow, who was on the panel. And I got the first question. I started to answer, and Alicia interrupted, and she said, Ted, Tony loved you. And I thought, wow, I will remember this moment for the rest of my life. And the same thing happened in doing the memorial speech for Jerry Coleman. And Maggie came up to me and said to me at his funeral at the then Navy base, now Marine base. In fact, it was already the Marine base at Miramar, and where Jerry is buried. And Maggie said to me, Jerry loved you. And money doesn't matter. Meeting famous people doesn't matter when you can have that kind of relationship, friendship, what have you, because of the business that you were in and meeting these people. And that's what I've had for 50 some years. And I was lucky that I would never, ever, people think I'm egotistical and arrogant. All the other things. That's like Howard Cosell's last book, where it opens up. People think I'm arrogant, pompous, obnoxious, irritating. I am, of course, all of those things. That's how the book begins. And I know that I'm perceived of many of those things myself, especially in my Channel 8 days, because you can write a column, as so many great columnists did, and knock the crap out of somebody, a team or individual. But to do it on television, right in their living room, right in their face, and give them your opinion, a lot of people don't like that. And many people did not like that also. That's why in marketing research at Channel 8, it was basically love and hate. There was nobody in the Leitner's all right. There was none of that. It was I hate his guts, or I really, really like him. And the comedian Rusty Nails, who was around, and we've known him so as John for 1,000 years, and he would, in his club, he would always say, the marketing research here in San Diego shows there's only two kinds of people You either hate Ted Leitner or you are Ted Leitner. So I got used to that because it worked. It just worked. I never planned it because I'm not smart enough. You should have seen what we went through to get this Zoom on the air with my lack of smarts and intelligence. It was like the monkeys discovering fire. I can't do it. I just can't. And so I'm not that smart, and I would never plan, I'll go out there and I'll be opinionated and have a big mouth. I am opinionated and I have a big mouth, and that just came out naturally on Channel 8, as it did in other markets that I worked in. Some where it didn't work and some where it worked. And it just happened. Like I said, it just happened. And because I am opinionated and I do have a big mouth, but in this case, it kind of worked that nobody had done it that way. And I was very, very lucky to be successful, surrounded by great people like Mike Tuck and Allison Ross and Clark Anthony and Larry Himmel and oh, so many others.
Teddy, you make me laugh, and you've made me laugh for half of my entire life, it seems like, probably more. And I really, we've gotten together, we've gotten to know each other quite well, and you still make me laugh, and I still dig your stories. There are some questions, Julie says, from folks. Julie, you want to take over? And
Back Ted, you are beloved. We've got lots of great comments coming in on Facebook, which is so much fun. Alex has already bought the book, and they're great stories. And
that's one.
There's one. And that he misses you on the Padres broadcast.
I do too.
Yeah. And then Susan's on here saying that she was a quiet kid too. And she was loving your rant about that. So lots of good comments coming in. This one we might not have enough time for. David wants to know what happened to the San Diego Padres this year.
Great question, David. Great question. And it was a collapse of enormous proportions. And anybody who says otherwise is not being honest with you. And Peter Seidler has said the same thing, and he owns the club and has spent a ton of his money. And I always wondered this, and I've never asked Peter this, that he was close to death twice with cancer. And he survived that. And I really think he believes, hey, I ain't taking the money with me. I'm spending this. I'm going to give the fans of San Diego what they've been waiting so long and very patiently recently. I'm going to give them a winner. So to spend that, have that kind of payroll, and then pick up Blake Snell and Yu Darvish, unheard of. The rotation, if Paddock is coming back and improves, and Lamet is going to be one of the great pitchers in baseball, coming back off the injury, and you add Darvish and you add Snell, I mean, that may have been the best rotation in all of baseball. But they didn't pitch up to par, and they had injuries without any question. No excuses. Everybody's got them. That's what Lasorda always talked about. Nobody wants to hear about your injuries. You know what I mean? Half the people are glad you got them, and the others don't want to hear about it. And it's true. They've all got problems. They've all got injuries. And the Padres had theirs, but so did the Dodgers. They lost Dustin May, a great young starter, for the entire season. They lost Bellinger for a couple of months. They lost Kershaw now and for another month or so earlier. So they've all got that same problem. But the Padres is inexplicable. Mm-hmm. And it's a tremendous letdown. Only 2015, when they picked up Upton, remember, and all those great hitters for the team. And then the pitching went south. And nobody really had a great year, a so-called career year, hitting. And 2015 was, up until then, the biggest disappointment in Padre history. Because all the other times, we knew if they're going to be bad, we knew if they're going to be good. And quite frankly, I had a lot of bad, mostly bad, in my career. I saw Bruce Bochy one time when he managed the Giants. And then Bochy yelled to me around the batting cage, "How many years, Dad, with the Padres?" And at that time, I said, 39. And he said, "Hey, 5 good." And I said, "Yeah, you would know you were there for those 5." And he was. But the 2015 didn't have this payroll. 2015 didn't have Manny Machado and Tatis and Hosmer and Will Myers. I think Myers might have been here. I can't remember. Anyway, to answer your question, Dave, you can point to this and that and this, but it's just a total collapse. And I think they made several trades of Lucchesi and those other guys and traded away a lot of their pitching depth. Mm-hmm. And then when they had these injuries, they didn't have the depth at the major league level or the minor league level to fill in. And the Dodgers did. And that was a big difference, I believe. So now they got their work cut out for them. They have the core, it's there. The talent is there. The backing of Peter's money is there. And there's no question they will be picked again to be a contending title type team again next year. But getting rid of this taste, people can't wait for next season to start.
Yeah. My husband just put away his Padres shirt today. It's like time to fold it up and put it away.
That's it.
For another season.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Debbie is on here. She says, hi, Ted. She was a Padre fan until they traded Joe Carter and Robbie Alomar. Those guys were great. And then moved on to win the World Series. What the heck happened?
You know, fascinatingly enough, Joe Carter was a terrific player. And, you know, he went on to great fame in hitting that walk-off home run for Toronto in the World Series, I guess in '93 it was. And Robbie Alomar, by the way, is somebody, if you look about this and look about Tony Gwynn and what he could do, and now talking about Tatis, well, to me, the most talented ball player that they had was Robbie Alomar, who had more power than Tony from both sides of the plate, could run well, maybe a little, I'm not sure it's a little better than, not as well as the young Tony Gwynn, and could do everything and had incredible range. Tony was a 5-time Gold Glover in right field with a really good arm. Robbie was all world at second base, range, arm, everything, a better defender. And the worst trade in Padre history was trading Robbie Alomar. There's no question about that. And it was Joe McElvain, not my favorite general manager. I was not his favorite broadcaster, because when they were looking to cut one of the broadcasters during the difficult financial days in the early 90s, he went to the owner. He said, if you're going to cut somebody, cut Leitner. And it turned out they cut Rick Monday, who went and made 3 times the money with the Dodgers after playing for the Dodgers, among others. And Rick is still there, making more money than I ever made. Thanks a lot, Rick. But McElvain traded Robbie Alomar for Tony Fernandez, saying if you get a great shortstop for a great second baseman, you get the great shortstop. The problem was Joe's full of beans, that Tony Fernandez was nowhere near still a great shortstop. And then Tony, you know, was in the Ring of Fame at Toronto and the Blue Jays Hall of Fame and all that stuff, a marvelous player, but there's no way he was still great. And he was not a Robbie Alomar. That crushed the Padres. But when you talk about stuff like that, you also know that the ownerships back then were not going to keep those players. They're not going to, when the money started coming, getting big with Robbie Alomar, like it did with a bunch of others, they traded all those. Those days are over. And I know Padre fans, really, that means so much to them, that when a guy gets up there and Padres is ready to trade him, allowing him to walk as a free agent, that's not happening. The great Padres will stay great Padres, because that's what Peter Seidler is going to do. And he proved that by getting Machado and making sure that he's in a 14-year contract, is never leaving.
Now, the manager may be a different story, though, Ted, but we'll see.
Well, managers always are. Managers always are. And I don't know how many games they really matter about, but as opposed to football and basketball, but they matter. They matter. And you must have the respect of the players. And that's not easy to do. Major League Baseball players are different. Like in football, you have meetings every day. Basketball, meetings and film session every day. That ain't baseball. It's a totally different game. Totally different game. And you have a manager says, get out there and kill them. That's football. That's not baseball. Baseball is not a grind your teeth kind of a game. The more you grind and focus in, the worse you get. You're pressing. It's a totally different sport, needing a totally different type of leader who knows to back off and you know, sometimes they'll call a guy Mr. Meetings. You know, they'll knock a manager who has too many meetings, and they'll do that. And so to handle baseball players, it's a very difficult hire to do it. And they've done it with guys that had no managerial experience at the majors, with Andy Green and Jace Tingler, and it didn't work out. And I'm curious if they will now go and try to get a guy who has experience or not, or maybe they're keeping Tingler. I mean, as of this morning, I didn't know what was going on anyway. And AJ Preller, I assume, will make that call on his own. If Peter Seidler intercedes in that, I don't know if that changes things, but Tingler's a great friend of AJ Preller, and that might save him. I don't know, but it's difficult. And I've seen all rookie managers make mistakes. and cost ball games to a certain degree. So it's a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other kind of thing. Padres have some huge decisions to make.
Okay, we have run out of time, but I want to end this, Ted, with you telling everybody, what do you want them to take away from your book?
That's a darn good question. I would like, not so much, I'd like them to, like John and I talked about this, I want them to laugh, John. And John said, yeah, I want them to laugh too. And I really do. I think that's such a gift. That's such a gift. I told somebody that the other day. Who was it? Ken Levine. Ken Levine, who I did 2 years of Padres with, who's a Hollywood writer, a comedy writer and a director and a producer. And he's written for MASH and The Simpsons and Frasier and all those, and he's incredibly funny. And I inscribed a book to Ken, and I said, you know what? We've never had a conversation where you didn't make me laugh. Mm. And that is such a gift, and I thank you. And that's the kind of thing I would like. It is so hard to, especially in this day and age, politically, and in a pandemic and all the insanity that has come into this country of ours. And I don't know what's going to save it or make it better. But if you can give somebody a laugh in the midst of that, and I think this book does that, I would like them to take away that. If they can look and say, you know, my dad was the same way, and I'm so glad that I'm not that way to my kids, and so forth, and I can identify with me that way. And conversely, in worshiping my mother, the dedication of this book is to my mom, an absolute angel, an angel. And though I had difficulties with my father, was so lucky. She was the first gift of my life that day in birth. And I think they can identify with that and other situations, you know, in terms of colleagues and work. And I think there's stories in there about business, the business of broadcasting and sports that they will be able to identify with. I hope they take away some of that with their business. But at the bottom line has to be, if you can get a laugh in this day and age, I'll take it. We'll take it.
Agreed. Ted Leitner. Oh, where'd you go? Are you still with us, Ted?
He disappeared.
I know. He just said, there I am.
He said, that's it. I'm done. Lights out.
I see you, but I don't know if anybody else does.
And now you're sort of sideways. Isn't
well, that's okay.
funny?
We're closing out now.
I'm glad it happened now and not like a half hour ago.
Well, Ted Leitner, it has been an absolute pleasure hosting you. I absolutely adored every moment of this. You are beloved in San Diego, the voice of San Diego, always and forever. John, thank you.
You're
and
welcome.
With that, I'm going to say goodnight.
Great fun. Thank you, Julie.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.